Let's picture, if we can, ourselves in kind of that South Florida, that Tampa area, if you will, around the time of, the height of Santo Trafficante Jr. But before we can even get to that time, before he became kind of that quiet king of Florida, Trafficante Jr. was an individual. He was a very bright man and already speaking five languages. If that's not something that kind of sets him apart from maybe some of his peers, specifically for at the time, I'm not really sure what is. When we think about that, there's a level of intellection that we think about. Most mob bosses rule with some form of muscle. Trafficante Jr. influenced with fluency, right? These languages: Spanish, Italian, Sicilian dialects, English, honestly, and then an underworld vocabulary that helped him know how to navigate places like Havana, Tampa, Sicily, places that kind of just, because he could speak all these languages, made it kind of just one neighborhood for him. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, but it seems like he was really very strategic, multilingual, and multilingual diplomat, maybe, in a world that was kind of just built on a whole lot of whispers at the time. But in terms of his roots, really, who was he? He grew up in Ybor City, and this was kind of like this melting pot of immigrants, cigar workers, political exiles, even, if you will. It wasn't necessarily just a neighborhood, but let's call it a training ground, to be honest with you. By the time, though, that he inherited his father's empire, he could move between cultures effortlessly. He might have a meeting in Tampa at noon. Let's say that he might have had a conversation in Havana by nightfall, whilst sending a message, all the way to Sicily before sunrise. You get the idea. Very fluent. And when we think about, Havana, Cuba, particularly at the time, neon lights, roulette wheels, rum bottles, smoke, right? In Cuba, his languages became weapons for him. He could negotiate with American mobsters and kind of charm Cuban officials, but also communicate with his Sicilian partners, all without translators, all without misunderstanding. Maybe that's why Meyer Lansky trusted him so much, right? That's why the Havana casinos kind of just thrived under his watch. And maybe that's why when the revolution came, Trafficante wasn't just another mobster from America, but he was a man who understood everything from the inside. So was he a diplomat, a negotiator, a survivor who maybe had leverage? Or was he simply the only mob boss who just understood that, power isn't always muscle?